Good evening, and welcome to CITI Media Reporter. I'm Howard Hominoff, your executive producer and host, and thank you for joining us. Tonight we're joined by Warren Schlichting, who's SVP for media sales and analytics for Dish. And Warren, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Howard.
I should note that if there were a founders committee or hall of fame of people in the advanced advertising world, I suspect that you would be in it. So why don't we start, especially for a lot of folks, what is advanced advertising? It's a term you hear all the time. What is it? How do you define it? What is it?
That's a good question because it's almost always defined as what's next.
Okay.
Whenever you get one piece of advanced advertising that folks really were saying they wanted, it seems to move a little bit on you. But generally it includes addressable advertising, at least with respect to TV, interactive advertising, and then an assortment of data products that we have, at least at Dish and a couple of other places as well.
And kind of where did that addressable advertising capability sort of start? You don't need to go through the Columbia Business School PowerPoint presentation, but give us a sense of sort of where did it come from and how did we get at least to where we are?
So it's another good question because television is a broadcast medium, and the joke was spray and pray. Spray your advertising, pray the right people are watching. Right. But typically, you've got to have some sort of technology intersect that stream to make it do more than just reach everybody. And so that's where an operator comes in, whether it be it cable or, in this case, DBS, digital broadcast satellite. The technology actually is able, that we bring, actually allows you to target an ad to a household, to a region, sort of any number of ways that you want to designate where that ad should be placed.
And why, you've talked about this before in public forums, et cetera. Why has it, and it's one of these things that the capability seems so appealing and valuable for advertisers, certainly something that the operators would want to sell. Why has it taken so long to come to fruition?
I think it's just the Tower of Babel. There's so many operators. So you talk about technology intersecting the stream, allowing, more capabilities, but, there are any number of large cable operators plus the two big satellite providers. And it's just hard for folks that are sworn enemies on the subscriber side to get together on the advertising side and create standards and collaborate. We've started some of that, by the way, but we're in the early stages.
Yeah, and is it primarily, is it more than anything else a technological challenge, or is a big part of it kind of the business piece of getting the advertisers at the end of the day, you've got to foot the bill through their agencies? Is it kind of getting them to or across the finish line?
It's a little bit of both, right? You've got to get a technology solution. Then you've got to get somebody to buy it, get some of the money, prime the pump, right? And hopefully we're at least there or a little bit past, but the more money, the more incentive for the operators to collaborate and to standardize. And I think it just goes back and forth. As we make progress with the revenues, that'll be a greater incentive to pick up some of the smaller operators for sure, hopefully some of the bigger guys. And back and forth it goes. It's also hard to change habits of buyers too. You've got television buyers that, it's complicated, right? So you've got to get a group of folks that understand it and are really motivated to.
Those folks had a pretty good world where there was just 3 big networks, and that was, you had 3 good lunches, and there you go. You've done your work.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't
want to disparage the buyer community.
Disparage too much.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I think even if you're in that community and you want to change and you say I'm dying to buy better for my clients, it's hard. And one of the things that's made it hard, I think, is there is incredible pressure right now on agency margins. So you come along with a product like addressable or interactive. Those are complicated products that require more manpower and more attention, a little bit more customized than this standard sort of well-oiled machinery of the past. And so with that margin pressure, fewer people, then you come in a new product, harder, more complicated. it's hard for them even to break the old habit.
So if it takes somewhat more, certainly at the beginning, more manpower, more kind of elbow grease, both technologically and just in a sales capacity to kind of get it through the system, does the advertiser at the end of the day have to, or are they willing to pay a little bit more for this addressable targeting capability? Or is it, well, if I don't do it, I'm going to lose out to the, to the looming online or digital world?
Yeah. So the advertisers pay more, but really pay less. And so there's a little bit more of a premium for sure to reach the audience that they are seeking. But I think the real incentive is to pay less overall and cut some of the inefficiencies around the edge. With any linear television ad, you reach a lot of people that just are never going to buy your product. And so this allows people a tighter targeting pattern, so a little bit more to reach that group, but less overall. I think that's what will drive this into being a mainstream product.
And how about the reaction to, or I guess I'm looking for the voice that advertising has within the multi-channel world? For a long time it was very much the back seat to we make our money on subscribers and running this content to large numbers of subscribers. They pay us their monthly fee. And advertising in the multi-channel video world was kind of the, I wouldn't say poor sister, but it was it was certainly the younger daughter.
You're kind.
We're well, you came all the way here.
Right.
It might as well be nice. So where's your seat at the table now? And is there a big difference between the seat at the table amongst satellite companies versus cable? Or, what are some of the kind of the atmospherics around that?
So we often refer to ourselves. It's really the tail of the dog, because the subscriber business really rules that culture, and I think it realistically it will for years to come. Now, as an ad guy, do I sort of fantasize that yes, we're very important, and at times they tell us we're important? Sure, but really at the end of the day, that subscriber business is what's going to drive our companies. And so for us, it's all about how do we always increase the yield on what we're given. How do we give the subscriber what they want on the subscription side? How do we give the advertiser what they want on our side? And I think as long as we sort of stay true to that and don't worry too much about our sphere of influence, we'll do okay.
Do you find there is a growing pressure on the ad business, in part because the subscriber side, the content side, has these enormous pressures? Certainly the multi-channel video providers would say this, great pressures in paying for the content, which always seems to go up, right, no matter what. And you've just recently done a deal with ESPN, you know that pretty well. So does that create much more pressure on, hey, come on, let's we need you to be contributing to the mix here?
Yeah, I know in my case, I don't know if it's pressure per se, but there's a greater appreciation of the high margin that we can drive. Yeah. And so I know Dish has been very assertive about providing resources, both technology and personnel, to drive the advertising business forward. It's a good supplement. It certainly isn't the main show by any stretch, but it's a good supplement, high margins, and I think we actually have an opportunity to drive that business a lot further than we are currently. Certainly the cable guys make a lot more money than we do on a per subscriber basis.
Do you, let's talk a little bit about you versus cable, okay? So the cable would, always sort of, they certainly have no problem portraying themselves as kind of the, we've got the broadband pipe and satellite doesn't have that. So how do you stack up and how do you compete with, you may be frenemies, you may be ways where you've got to work together, but you're obviously selling against each other. So how does satellite make its case? We start with versus cable. Or a cable/telco?
Well, so I don't know if I'm the right one to speak about how we compete for subscribers. We're a single-play video, and it's well known that Charlie Ergen has amassed a considerable portion of spectrum, and we continue to buy H-block spectrum. Or H-block auction was something we just were successful in. I think that's a sort of a really nice piece of potential. It's like potential energy, right? It's a big piece of potential for our next phase as a company. As an ad sales group, I've never met another operator group that I didn't want to partner with. So we've partnered with the cable guys and with NCC on local business. We've actually
explain what NCC is, because not everybody may understand what their role is in kind of this ecosystem.
NCC is National Cable Communications. But what they've done is they've gathered together the operators, and so they represent cable operators in the ad sales business across multiple markets. And so we're working with both cable operators and with NCC to sell a part of our inventory that we've called local addressable. And so we use our addressable technology to actually mimic the cable zones. And so that's been, we're off to a good start. It's a new business. And then we've also partnered with our sworn enemy DirecTV, at least on the subscriber side. We've partnered with them to sell political advertising. And again, it's statewide addressable. So you've never been able to buy political advertising on just a statewide basis.
And talk about how has that come into play yet, or is 2014 really the first election cycle that's live?
So we did a couple of campaigns. Okay. We did one, Obama for America, which is a terrific campaign. His team was very sophisticated with the use of data. And more recently, we've done about a dozen campaigns for the 14 off year. The numbers are staggering. I don't know if you know them, but the $3.4 billion spent in 12, and that was a presidential year. Yeah. This year, it's estimated to be at least $3 billion with no presidential elections. So, you can hardly stay away from that sort of advertising money. And we think we've got a unique product with our statewide addressable.
No, I was going to say, in the political world, do you see, are there different kinds of messages than they're bringing to what they typically do in broadcast and to broadcast television, or is that still, is it much too experimental to see how that?
It's a terrific question, because one of the hardest things about addressable advertising is creating new pieces of copy for every different audience, right? Yeah. Typical sort of general market advertising doesn't work like that. You have these long budget cycles and big high quality 30-second spots. Political, typically a laggard in advertising, has really kind of gotten religion around data over the last 2 years. And they are just professional copy makers, right? They can't make it fast enough.
Right, yeah.
So you've got new spots whenever you turn around, which is great, right? If you're targeting different audiences and you need a different spot with a different message, the political crew is very skilled at cranking out additional 30-second spots.
And is it also in this $3 billion or whatever the number turns out to be for this year, is that a lot of the kind of this, let's call it the Citizens United groups that are a part of this, not just candidates, but causes and those
at least
folks, I assume,
third
right?
is initiative money. Okay. So that's another source of advertising revenue that wasn't there a few years ago. Yeah. We haven't seen too much of that sort of money yet, but you can hear it as you walk into D.C. There's rumblings of the super PAC money, and there's a sort of an interesting alliance or unspoken alliance between parties and these PAC, the super PACs. Yeah.
So what else? This is obviously a kind of a whole new front that you're going to be that you've entered into and hold some potential. What are some of the other things that you're particularly excited about where Dish is innovating, and maybe if there are other folks innovating that you find interesting that you haven't gotten to yet? But start with Dish and kind of the products or services that you're most excited about.
Well, this goes back to addressable, but there are many variations, and so whenever we do a list match for to figure out who we should be sending the ads to, it's very similar to direct mail, where if you send a letter to a post box, we just send a 30-second spot to a DVR that's addressable enabled. So we think there are a lot of places where that can take us. And then not to mention the idea that DirecTV and Dish are collaborating on political, that's 1 in every 5 households that we can reach with addressable advertising. Right. It doesn't take too much imagination to say, well, perhaps if political is successful, it could be more broadly marketed as a general market solution. So those are a couple of the things that we're working on. And then I think you may have seen the announcement with Disney, ESPN. Mm-hmm. So we'll certainly have over-the-top or IP Internet Protocol delivered content soon, and that'll provide us with additional digital video impressions to sell as well.
And that product, we were talking about this earlier, that product in particular is one, you don't necessarily have to be a Dish subscriber. The notion of this is a Dish multi-channel video subscriber, right? So it's not a TV everywhere as that term has come to be. It's kind of as an add-on to you're a package subscriber. It's a different tack.
Right. It's a good distinction to make. TV everywhere as a complement to the Dish subscription. Right. I think, and we haven't actually launched our product yet, but I think the idea in general is that this will be a separate subscription. Dish has a product named Dish World that I think is a precursor. It's a good analog where we had a number of international networks delivered solely through IP onto a Roku box or a couple of other devices as well. And so I think it's more akin to that, although I think some of the details are being worked out.
And are people, I don't want to go too far down this road,
Sure.
but are people, and that international business was one that, Charlie Ergin was a visionary about long time ago.
He's been a visionary on
a lot of things.
A number of things.
Yeah, right. So is that one in which you're reaching out to people to subscribe to that, even if they're not buying the or a traditional Dish package?
That's right.
Okay, so that is being sold.
It's a separate subscription.
Okay.
What form, what shape, what networks are offered?
Yep. Still
TBD, but it's a separate subscription from your Dish linear. Yeah. Not meant to complement each other as much as act as an alternative.
Okay. I want to pick up on one thread of what you just said, which is the favorite bugaboo of those concerned about addressable advertising, et cetera. You know where I'm going, which is privacy, right? So Dish, multi-channel video providers have enormous, second-by-second data about what individual activity is with respect to the home, right? And what's going on and what their multi-channel video actions are and consumption patterns, et cetera. How do you kind of address the concerns of privacy advocates, the FTC, others who are thinking you're leveraging sort of your set-top box in the home to now kind of get at all this other information that you're going to use to send people advertising, but the information that you're using people, is a violation in some sense of people's personal information or privacy rights.
Yeah, we certainly don't think of it as a violation. The Cable Act and then later the satellite legislation that's similar allows for use in advertising. I think the key piece is what we call the creepy factor. Yeah. And so we draw the line where we don't use viewer behavior. We don't target off of behavior. So just broad strokes, behavioral advertising is typically what is used online. Cookies show behavior, interest. What we've done is we do have subscriber information, but in a privacy respectful way, we do a match, third party, bonded house, and then are given anonymized numbers that allow us to actually do the targeting via DVR. And the test is, if this were somehow, if you left your briefcase at Grand Central and somebody else found it with these, this match inside, could anyone do anything with it? And we were pretty confident they couldn't. Mm-hmm. So we don't even know the ads that we're sending to specific households, and it'd be very hard for anybody within Dish to figure that out. So I think we've figured out the privacy piece of it. The question is just court of public opinion, does it pass muster?
Right. And do you think that in the way you're operating now, and sounds like you take some steps that you may not necessarily be required to by law, but trying to make kind of prudent business decisions based on, given brand, reputation, et cetera. Are you comfortable that you've got enough leeway to use the data. You know, we got the privacy concern on one side. On the other hand, is there enough useful data to make the business work for you?
Well, I think there's a lot of untapped potential. Yeah. You can imagine, you know, at some point in the future where you've covered all the bases with everybody, all advertisers, but that's a long way in our future. I think there's a lot of potential just on the demographic without going to the behavioral. And I would also say to your question earlier about the culture of the company, you know, is ad sales more powerful? You know, the subscriber culture is there, will probably always be there, and that keeps everybody honest on the advertising side. You know, we're very conservative with what we do with that data. We would never want to jeopardize the subscriber business. That still is the, you know, bigger dog for sure.
Yeah. So we've been talking about kind of your competition or the environment with your cable brethren. Talked a little bit about the kind of privacy and governmental world. How about the advertiser? And talk a little bit about maybe the agency and the advertiser, but what are you hearing back from them in terms of the attractiveness of the products? And, you know, as you said, it's not an easy automatic, yep, now you're addressable, I'm on board. So what are you hearing, and what do you need to do if you haven't done it to get more of them into the tent?
So we've had early success, particularly with automotive clients, with financials, and those are fairly obvious. You know, it's either a big purchase once every 3.5 years, and then you're not in the market for another, you know, 3.25 years, or they're financial products that are specialized for some and not for others. So it's been really good reception so far. I think to actually take that to the next level, though, we've got to be able to make that case to, you know, every vertical that we are marketing to. That's where I think it gets really exciting. And the advertisers so far have embraced that. You know, time will tell. We should have this again next year. We'll come back and I'll give you a progress report.
All right, good. And how about, you know, in doing this, you're overseeing a team of people with a whole variety of different skill sets to make this thing work. Between the technology, sales guys, the data wonks, you know, business school students, you know, are probably somewhere in the mix here. Give us a sense of that mix of skills that it takes to make your team work, and obviously then, you know, make the business work.
So it's an answer my kids never want to hear. But when they say, you know, I'm thinking about government or I'm thinking about majoring.
Homework is involved at some point along the way.
That's actually better, right?
Okay.
It's study your statistics. Be a quant, because there's only going to be more and more data. You will have job security as a quant. So I've got a great team. One of the things when I inherited the bulk of the Dish team, you know, Dish tests people mercilessly when you come on board. So you have assessment tests, they're like mini SATs. You go through a lot of that testing. So I've got a pretty smart team, I got to say. And within the team, I think they've adapted well to sort of taking on this more quantitative sale. And I think in the future, we'll see only more of that. Big data is here. I know that's a cliche, big data, but it's here. And we see it every day. And bit by bit by bit, it just becomes more of a data-driven, quantitative-oriented. You don't have to be a quant jock, but you've got to be able to
you got to be comfortable with it.
Comfortable with it. It's a good way to say it.
How about your competition with the other digital media? You're digital too, obviously, but, you know, online, mobile, those platforms where, you know, the conventional thought is, compared to television, there's so much more granular data available online. How do you kind of, what's the orientation? Are you trying to be more like them? Do you offer something very different? What's the orientation against that world?
Yeah, so it's back to that behavioral versus demographics, at least for now. If you want to buy auto intenders, you probably want to go to a website, you know, get a group of folks that have visited an auto website in the last, you know, 6 weeks, which is typically the shopping window. If you want to market your car to households with incomes of $75,000 or more and have 3 kids, you you'll probably favor us because you just can't tell all of that from a cookie. We have that with that, that private data match that we're talking about. So there are different specialties within both of those. I would also say something that's come out recently, there's a lot of fraud with digital video and with digital advertising. It's an unfortunate fact because we, in many respects, follow the digital pathway, but that's turned into a selling point for us because we actually have real, robust set-top data that shows whether people are watching or not. And so that's a selling point that we hadn't anticipated, but it's an interesting one.
One of the challenges certainly around the advanced advertising, digital media, new media advertising business has been around measurement. Huge, again, talk about the Tower of Babel. It almost, Babel seemed pretty tame sometimes. And we've gone from a world where in TV, it's Nielsen. Nielsen ratings were / are, this dominant form of measurement. How do you see things now and where do you kind of are you beginning to see it going around how this media, especially in addressable, targeted world, et cetera, how it gets measured well?
Well, so really out of necessity, we did a deal with Rentrack, and I know Kantar's in a similar business, but out of necessity to measure addressable, we really needed a large sample. So we collect data from 5 million homes, roughly 5 million, and that allows us to actually measure addressable in a way that a Nielsen panel could just never measure.
And why is that?
Well, if you've got, I think Nielsen's up to 22,000 homes now.
Okay.
But in an addressable campaign, you might be only targeting 3, 4, 6, or 7% of your population. I think Dish probably only has, a few hundred Nielsen boxes as it is, right. And if you take a subset of that, you just don't have anything that's statistically accurate anymore.
Well, so, when I was at CNBC, we used to be upset. The ratings would go down 25% because, like, one guy in Cleveland, we would joke, went out with his family for dinner. That's it. We're
turned
crushed.
56, right?
Or I turned 56. Now we can't count it anymore. All right. Well, more to come. Maybe a little bit on the Comcast Time Warner front. So with that, I want to thank Warren for being my guest tonight.
Thank you, Howard.
And I thank you for tuning in. Again, I'm Howard Homanoff, and this has been CITI Media Reporter. Good night.